Buddy, I'll just wait a few moments. Like I hear a lot of people saying, just to get myself centered in the energy and give people a chance to come on. I just want to start by saying that today is the Hebrew birthday of my father, David Yitzchak ben Shmuel. His neshama should have an aliyah. Many aliyot, and come back down into a healthy body like we are promised for all of us. Okay, so actually I'm not going to wait. I want to dive straight in, and I just want to explain the odd labeling, like I'm labeling this call for, even though I started this project about 6 or 7 days ago. So I'm coming on at kind of sporadic intervals. It depends on what's happening in my life. So sorry about that. I'll try to let you know when I'll be on, and you can always check, if you're not signed up for my YouTube, I really suggest that you do that. The link is below. Hit the notifications button, and then you'll see, if you're scrolling, you'll get notification. If if you see it, if you miss it, you'll get it later. Actually, I would like people to come on live when possible. I know it's not usually possible for most of us. Hi, Vanessa. Just because it really helps to enhance the field. It really helps for you. It really helps you to participate in the live conversation. And really, that's such a big piece of what it's about. So my goal is to make these more frequent and shorter, at least shorter, but we'll see what happens because there's so much to say here. So first of all, we finished Purim. Purim is the high point of the month of Adar. Purim is the full moon. And the full moon represents the fullness of humanity, of the souls as reflectors of the divine. So the way that the moon goes up, from almost from the new moon dark to the full moon bright, and then it starts to go down again. But in the Hebrew calendar, we're still counting up the second half of the month, meaning that the power of the month is growing. So the power of the month begins. Hi, Norman. Hi, Annalie, and hi, Edna. The power, so good to be with you guys. The power of the moon, of the souls, grows in each month. Always new. It's always new. There's always new potential. Whatever we repeat, even in our lives, you guys, it's always on a higher level. The potential is always growing. We're in a process of macro development, macro and micro, but the whole cosmos, all beings, and especially human beings, are in a peak of an evolutionary process. So the growth that's in our world, and the sun and the earth and the galaxies, everything is moving with us, like the frequencies of everything, literally the path of the earth through space. I'm sure there are people here that know a lot more about this than I do, but it's all moving along with us, interacted with us to facilitate this. I don't want to use the usual word awakening, because what is really it facilitating? It is facilitating a birth, I guess it is an awakening, also in a revelation, but a birth of the essence of who we are, revealed within our bodies, within our lives, within our world. Hey, Jennifer. Hi, Katie. Paula, good to see you. Paula, long time. Orly, this is so nice. So it's so nice to connect with you guys in person. That's the great benefit of being on live together. I'd love to hear, also please share if you want more people to participate, as I do. Share your comments if you have them. Questions. It would be really cool if at some point during this challenge we could have a Zoom, maybe a Nisan, just like to really connect in person, like face to face. I'll try to give you some notice about that one if we do it. Okay, so we're in this process of revelation of the self. So when the moon is full, as it just was with Purim, the energy of the month is at its the revelation, the light of the month as reflected from the Creator is at its peak. But from there, what happens? We've set that light, which we're saturated with, like when the 15th of the month, the 14th of the month, the moon is saturated with the sun's light. The rest of the month, where we keep progressing forward in our evolutionary process, our job is to absorb the light so that it becomes our own and to begin to shine from the inside. And in fact, when we come to the month of Nisan, which is in now where this is the 18th day of Adar, so you can count, 30, I think it's 30 days. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 30 days this month. So another 12 days. So when we come to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that is the beginning of a new influx into the world of the power to do miracles. So what's happening through Adar Many things are happening, but one of them is that we have received a full saturating dose of divine light that never existed before, of new mazel that we're meant now to absorb and internalize to the point where we are shining from the inside and we can be co-creators of miracles. So that's what needs to happen. Okay, so I want to tell you a little story. I don't think I've said this before, but if I have, it's worth hearing again. I heard this from my teacher in the first energy class I ever took many years ago. She talked about epigenetics. So epigenetics, as I'm sure you know now, I think the term was coined by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who I interviewed a few times. Very, very fascinating person, innovator. Epigenetics, in case you don't know, is the science of how the environment influences the genes. So genes influence what happens with the body, right? What happens with our growth and evolution, our path through life. But what influences the genes? So the genes can be turned on and off by the environment. The example that this teacher gave, which is so clear, is if you had a tomato seed and you put it on a desk and it sat there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 50 years, nothing would happen to it. I mean, maybe it would disintegrate. Let's say that it was in a safe environment. No tomato plant would grow from it because tomato plants don't grow in the environment of a desk. But if you took that tomato seed, again, assuming that it was protected, and you put it in the ground and you watered it and you put it in the sun, so a tomato plant would grow, new life would come forth from it. So it's that seed is holding the potential for new life. And you know how it works with plants, right? And animals and people, that we're made eternal. So from that plant would grow not only fruits, but the fruits have seeds, and you could multiply the plants and grow hundreds of plants and thousands of plants. You could have a tomato forest. So it all depends on the environment. So here's the deal. There's more than one reality here. And we have to switch the level of reality that we're connected to. Just like there's more than one station on the radio, and by turning the dial, we bring in a different station. We hear a completely different song. We hear a completely different conversation. We have a completely different experience. So that's true in our world. And I believe that that's also why, one of the reasons why the Rebbe said so many times that we are the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption. What does that mean? 2 fields, you guys. They're really more than 2 fields, but they're 2 macro fields here: exile and redemption. So we can be connected to the field of exile, and we're born into it. Our wiring, the snake voice, all of that is part of the field of exile. Our caterpillar selves, which I've been talking about and will continue to talk about, and my book is all about metamorphosis. So our caterpillar selves are meant to be here. They're not wrong. They're not bad. It's our lower human self. It's our human self. Like my friend Ani likes to say, baseline human consciousness. But that is in a particular environment that connects us to a particular field, that when we shift certain things about ourselves, when we start to turn on the redemption, the future part of ourselves, the future thoughts, the future beliefs, the future wiring, this is on my mind, the future brain wiring, all of that, I'll talk about that more in detail in a second. When we start turning that on, automatically we're tuning in, not that we have to create a whole new world. We're tuning into a different reality that has existed already side by side, or in the same space, really, because all realities are in this space, the same space. So we're tuning into a different reality, and then it comes into our physical world. Our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our cell wiring, and the world around us, because the reality is it truly is an out projection of our personal and collective consciousness. Also so important. So the Rebbe defined one of the ways that he defined these 2 fields is exile and redemption. And you could say that in many ways they correspond to 2 Kabbalistic fields called Mamali Kol Almin and Sovev Kol Almin. You could look at these as a matrix, an old matrix and a new matrix, or an old morphic field and a new morphic field. So the field of Mamali Kol Almin is a field of cause and effect, laws of nature. It can be a struggle. It's kind of the world of judgment. Not that all judgment is bad, judgment, discernment, separation. There are a lot of things to say about it. It's a very important phase, just like our human struggle is a very important phase, just like caterpillar is a very important phase. A butterfly doesn't get born. A butterfly comes from a caterpillar. It comes as a result of metamorphosis. So that's the field of Mamale Kol Almin, the light that fills all worlds. I'm not going to explain this in great detail because I end up teaching 3-hour classes every time I get on. It's really important. Hopefully we'll get to it. But just for this moment, just take it. It's the field that corresponds to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the snake voice, the ego, the identity, the struggles that we go through, the insecurities that we have, that the defensive emotions that we have, which caused Cain to kill Abel and causes wars and all of this stuff. It also causes striving. It also causes transformation. It also causes the intense work of melting down our old selves to become a new self. This is all part of the process. The Rebbe explained that redemption, Geula, is made out of exile, Gullus, with one addition. So in exile, we're missing the revelation of God. We're missing, it's like looking at the backside of a tapestry. We see all these knots and threads and tangles, and none of it makes sense. It all seems random. If you turn the tapestry around, if you see the plan, like I like to say the picture on the puzzle box, if you see the plan of the artist, you see the picture coming to life, even without the plan. Even when you look at the backside of a tapestry that's finished, it's not beautiful. When you look at the front side, it's a whole story. Everything makes sense. It's harmonious. It's coherent. It's beautiful. It's art. So the same with our lives. This is true of the Purim story also. It's a little bit of a problem for me because there's so much energy coming in. It's like I'm like feel like they're like downloads pushing against my brain, saying, go down this road, go down this road, go down this road. So I want to be clear. I don't want to leave anyone overwhelmed. So forgive me if I pause and dial back a little bit. But in the Purim story also, one of the characteristics of the Purim story, again, we just completed Purim all over the world. It came down, we did it. We brought it down on a whole new level. We brought down the divine light that's implicit in Purim on a whole new level. And that is now part of our world, being used in the beautiful mixture in this living art to create new colors, new brilliance, new light, new beauty, new power for the rest of the year or for the rest of forever. So what is one of the characteristics of the Purim story? It's that it took place over many years, and nobody who was there at the time could see how this event was going to lead to that event, or how that event was going to lead to that event, or how God, the hand of God, was directing everything from behind the scenes. Purim is about God hiding in nature. God does hide in nature. He also reveals himself through miracles. So the field of exile, God is mostly hiding through nature. In the field of redemption, there's no more hiding. Not God, not your soul. It's all revealed. So we need to switch fields. We need to tune into a new station that is already here. That station involves the revelation of the inner plan, the revelation of the inner purpose, a connection and a surrender to an alignment with God's plan. So that's really what this 6-week challenge is all about. That's what metamorphosis in our sense really is. So what is metamorphosis made of? Let me just stop for a second. I'm just like going on one breath. Let me see what you guys are saying. SLW, what's your actual name? Nice to see you here. Miriam. Oh, I'm so glad. And Norman, yeah, through the cocoon. Yeah. Rabbi Bitton gives techniques. Yes. It is an everyday process. Yeah. There are many, many techniques, and being in community and being in programs and being in training like this, connecting to a field, there are many, many things that can help us stay in that cocoon where the transformation, where the metamorphosis is happening. So I'm going to again say, and this is not the last time I'm going to say this, that just like we're the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption at the same time in the same space, just like the field of Mamali Kol Amin and the field of Soviv Kol Amin exist in the same time, in the same space, that's what metamorphosis is like too. So metamorphosis has a dual process to it. I know you know this, but we're going to know it deeper every time we repeat it. We're going to think about it more because this needs to be applied, especially as we're in the second half of the month. It's time to absorb. We can be saturated with the light of what we know. Now, is it ours? And as we internalize light, you know what happens? The light that we internalize turns on the lights from the inside. So we get light from the outside, and it's meant to light up the inside, like a candle lights another candle, until the light from the inside is blazing. That's really where we're going here. We're turning on the sun inside of our own beings. It's a process, but that's part of what redemption is all about. So metamorphosis is this dual Gullus and Geula process on this human level, on the Geula level, where we have exile in us, where we have the caterpillar. What's the caterpillar? Heavy, slow, vulnerable, earthbound, kind of stupid. I don't know if caterpillars are really stupid, but you think, they're just like kind of cute and dumb, just muddling along really slowly on the earth, that heaviness that we feel, the danger that we feel. A caterpillar is very small. It could be eaten by a bird. It could be stepped on by a foot. It can be burned by the sun. If it doesn't have a leaf, you get stuck on the sidewalk. There's nothing for it to eat. It's a long way when you're a caterpillar to get from, to get across a highway without getting run over. So that's basically the caterpillar life. That's what we've been living with. It's not so much fun. Yes, we have moments of fun. We have moments of joy. Maybe we have weeks of joy. Maybe there are people in the world that have months of joy uninterrupted. If you're one of those, please let me know some of your secrets. But, we are constantly as humans reminded, whether consciously, subconsciously, in terms of our environment, and especially now, how vulnerable we are, how little we are, how little control we have, how dangerous life is, how much harder we have to struggle. So that's the caterpillar reality. The butterfly is something we don't know. We don't relate to that. That's one of the reasons why it's so magical. I just actually saw a movie, shows that the butterfly is a symbol of the other side also, but I don't care. There's I'm not giving up the butterfly. There's a letter from the previous Rebbe about the whole idea of Mashiach, of the whole messianic thing, where somebody writes that the Christian religion talks about the Messiah and talks about the Messiah in ways that Judaism does not agree with, and therefore maybe we shouldn't talk about it. And the previous Rebbe said, just because someone else takes and distorts something from our holy Torah does not mean that we give up on it and we don't deal with it anymore. So butterflies are magical. Butterflies, I'm firmly convinced, are God's example for us at this time of where we're going and how we have to do it. So butterflies are temporal. Our souls are not. Our souls are permanent, and our future form is also going to be permanent in the body, but a different kind of body, a much lighter, more beautiful body. So the butterfly is light. It's magical. It's flexible. Flight means that you don't have to go through all the steps, right? It's like quantum leaps, like lift off and land somewhere else. Let the air carry you. Just use your imagination for a moment and think about the difference of the lightness and the happiness and the sunshine and the color and the flexibility and the exquisite beauty of the butterfly in a metaphor, in the metaphorical sense, the energy that is connected to versus the caterpillar. I'm not saying the caterpillar is not cuddly. It could be cuddly. I've picked up caterpillars, even though I don't like insects. They're cuddly, they're fuzzy. But the caterpillar is a very primitive form of the potential of that thing that becomes a butterfly. Anyway, so as it works in us, this dual last generation of exile, first generation of redemption process, the exile has a purpose, a huge purpose, a profound purpose that without which we could not get to redemption. Redemption is made out of exile, brought to its truth. When we reveal God in the exile, that's redemption. When we learn the lessons of our traumas and they turn into wisdom and freedom, that's redemption. So we are turning ourselves through the work that we do as caterpillars, through the heavy effort. The Rebbe Hillel Parich says I saw it quoted in Shar Yichud of the Mitzvah Rebbe, which I teach and kind of live and breathe. So he said that the main reason for creation is the transformation of darkness to light. Why is that? Because by dealing with darkness and transforming it, we reveal the divine within us. We are separate from divinity, or we couldn't be in darkness. Listen to this, you guys. This is a deep secret, and it's the core secret, or one of the most core secrets of reality. By being in darkness, by being subject to darkness, we exist as separate beings. A soul is not a separate being. All a soul wants is like to merge back into God, like the flame of a candle that's shaking, trying to get back to its source. Soul has no identity, no interest in having an identity. We're meant to have an identity because we're meant to be real. We're meant to be in real, intimate, deep relationship with God, and we're in the process now. So the soul has to be captured in this dark, dense material in order to make it feel separate, in order to give it an identity, in order to make it a point of perception, like a center point in the world that has an I, right? Without the body and the identity that goes with it, the ego identity, the soul would not have an I, it would not have a self. And through that self, because the core of that is the soul, and the core of the soul is divinity, and the core of divinity is also free choice. So from the darkness, the soul gets to prevail, to push its way through this thick density and cause the body, the mind, the lower level of the soul, the nephesh, that kind of controls that vehicle, our nephesh, human consciousness, causes it to make a choice that transforms some darkness into light. Every time it does that, what happened to the soul? It pushed through the darkness and got out to the surface and took charge. Did it get permanent charge, permanent control? Absolutely not. We're not designed that way. It's meant to be step by step, because infinity is coming out through the density and becoming the main part of us. We're not there yet, but we're very close to there. Who knows how far we are? It could be one more shovel full of dirt and we're like in the light. Who knows? Tell me if you understand what I'm saying so far or not. I don't want to say anymore if people aren't getting it. I'm reading what you said here. Katie says, community makes me feel focused. Caterpillars have their own beauty, but are vulnerable and fragile. They're very limited. Their range isn't big. Roller coaster of safety and danger. Yeah, butterfly necklaces. They can't have the rainbow and the butterfly. They can't have anything, Gila. Take it all back. They get nothing. Their symbols are all our symbols. Their symbols are like happy little things. No. Hearts? No, they don't get hearts. The caterpillar is not permanent. Yes, that's absolutely right. The metamorphosis to butterfly demands the desire and willingness to fly, to be independent, to leave behind a way of being that was limited. All that, yeah. All that. Okay, you're getting it. Okay, good. So I just want to make sure this is really clear, because, I've been thinking about it for years, but I don't know if I've said it in an absolutely grounding way. Your soul is a piece of God at its core. There are levels of the soul, but at the core of the soul is literally a piece of God. That's where free choice is. We don't really understand what free choice is, but let's just say for now. And your body and your identity, your human self, is the darkness, the lowest world. That when we learn what the purpose of creation is, yes, transforming darkness into light, and yes, God desires a dwelling place in the lowest world. What's that? It's a fallen world where the ego takes over to the point where people want to kill each other, and they do, and everything that goes with that. So in that darkest fallen world, which paradoxically gives us the absolute sense of self, I am the only thing that matters in the world. What else could allow people to perpetrate on other people the way that we are all learning is happening? Horrifically. And we can't, I for one can hardly, it's incomprehensible, but that is because of the ego that gives us that sense that I am real and I am the only thing that's real. So through this gives us what is actually real? God. So even though it's very, very fallen, as fallen as it could be, this ego, this sense that I am real and nothing else is real and I matter and nothing else matters, this is, in a certain sense, an essential experience that only God has. This allows us to relate to God. The problem is it's in a dark, twisted, opposite fallen way. So into this fallen situation, the soul, which is God's imprint within us, free choice within us, gets to choose to push its way through that darkness and dominate. Find a way to co-opt the body, and then ultimately the personality, the belief system, all of that. And in doing so, we have the permanence, the realness of us, and now, but only because of the darkness and the distortion and the separation, but now that gets permeated with oneness and light and godliness and freedom and divine power. Tell me if you get this. It's phenomenal. I mean, life is really challenging, and there have been many times in the last few years when I'm like, why? This is not a good idea, Hashem. This is just like, let's like an Italian neighbor, an Argentinian neighbor used to say from Morristown, finito la commedia. I'm not sure if that's how to say it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Finito la commedia. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Let this whole comedy end. But really, we've been through so much, and we need to end it properly. It's just darkness before the dawn. It's a push. We're not passive here, and that's what I'm here to say. That's why the 6-week challenge. We're not just waiting. You know what? If we're here to just wait, this is something I realized today. So a friend of mine, the community that I lived in for many years, had a loss. One of the rabbinical leaders passed away, and just yesterday, his neshama should have an aliyah. And this person said to me, I'm just having a hard time. It's so hard to hang on to the idea of Mashiach. And what came to me in a flash is that we can't wait, not for white hats, not for Mashiach. We can't wait passively. There are many reasons why, but I'll give you the most personal, urgent reason why. Because for this to happen, the entire caterpillar of humanity has to transform. Until that happens, we can still have a struggle. We're going to still have meltdowns. We're going to still be melting down the old. I didn't even finish with 2 paradigms. Hopefully I'll get back there. So if every cell has to melt down and then transform into its new form, and you're one of this is where I want to go. You're one of the imaginal cells. You're one of the future cells. You're meant to be in the head of the train, the first car of the train, and you're waiting for something to happen outside of you when you're meant to drive. Oy vavoy, like they say. Oy vavoy lanu. It's not good for us and it's not good for you. Like, I do believe that we each have our own individual creation bubble, as well as we're part of the whole. And we cannot wait for Mashiach. We need to step in. The Rebbe is all about this. The Rebbe's sichos are all about this. We have to do miracles by our nature. We have to switch from a Mali Kol Amin to Sobiv Kol Amin, from being subject to the laws of nature and here down here with the world bigger than us and we're small like a caterpillar. We have to rise and connect to God and co-create with God. Or we have to have bitachon. We have to have not just faith, but total trust, where we're beyond deserving and not deserving. We're so close to God that we're intimate. And of course we want the same things. And then our whole destiny is different and there can only be revealed good. All these different things that the Rebbe tells us. We have to live Mashiach. We have to open our eyes and see Mashiach. We have to realize that the table is set for the festival of the Messianic era, and that Mashiach is waiting behind the wall, yearning for us, looking through the cracks, yearning for us to. The Rebbe said that it could be 1 or 2 or 3 people that know what needs to be done and how it should be done. Why? Okay, so I'm going to say something about, again, and I'm going to repeat this a lot. And again, this is the theme of my book. And then the how-to, metamorphosis, because this is how we tune into a new field that's right here, that is right here side by side with the old field. This is our job. So half of the metamorphosis is melting down of all of the things that bind us to the old field of exile. What is that? Fear, anger, shame, sadness, grief. I'm not saying these things are bad. These things tie us to an old field, that underlying anxiety, that worry, everything that, if you think about Adam and Eve after eating from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, this perfect world. And then suddenly they internalize the energy of the snake, and the little voice starts to, oh, what did you do? It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's her fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. And they were hiding, they're ashamed, like all of this whole picture that we've suffered under, this deadly weight that causes all kinds of yuckiness and horrificness to burst out from the seams, to seep out of humans like slime. That's what needs to be transformed here. So how we have to do that is twofold. One is we need to be able to learn how to melt down the things that come up, the things that trigger us, our traumas, all of this stuff. And we don't melt it down by suppressing it. We have to learn how to transmute it, alchemy. And there's specific techniques, specific wisdom pieces and systems to do this. There are all kinds of healing modalities, but the bottom line is you want to embrace, you want to understand that you have this thing because the purpose of creation and your creation is to transform darkness into light so that your soul carrying God energy can shine through the reality of your darkness, the realness of your darkness, and become a completely new entity of a being that has God inside and yet is not merged, but is totally aligned. So you have to carry these things. We all do. This is the raw material of our redemption. The sadness, the fear, the shame, the blame, the anger, the sneakiness, the manipulation. What we have to change in the meltdown, I'm looking at this as a left and a right side. So we have the metamorphosis, we have the meltdown, then we have the reconstitution in the new way. This is epigenetics. Remember, I started out by talking about epigenetics. This is how we get the tomato seed to grow a tomato plant. How we tune into a new station. So we'll talk about it more, but the core for today of how the meltdown has to work is always, since Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, the way of dealing, the way human beings deal with these things is shame. There's something wrong with me. There's something really, really wrong with me. Who feels that way? Say me if you feel that way. I can say me. Put me in the chat if you feel there's something wrong with you at times. Not from your higher self, just your regular self. The self you don't talk to people about. I'm not going on until someone says me. There you go. Good job, Katie. Speaking for all of us. Orly, yes. Yeah, all of us do. All of us do. But say me because you claim it. Yeah, Kalish, hi. Because we all feel this, because we're designed to feel this. This is our inheritance, Adam and Eve. The shame is the number one separator between us and ourselves, us and our transformation, us and others, us and God. That's why Adam and Eve hid. They became ashamed. They realized they were naked. There are a lot of interpretations of that, not just physically. Naked of mitzvahs, they've done a terrible thing. A bottom line is shame. What is shame? It's like a cosmic autoimmune disorder that turns us against ourselves. Sydney, hello. So good to see you guys. Thank you for playing. So it turns us against ourselves. Our shame turns us against ourselves. It's like a cosmic black hole. It's like you shouldn't exist. I know it sounds weird to say that, but look inside, check it out. And I think you'll see if you go deep enough that sometimes you just feel like you shouldn't exist. Maybe you don't have to go that deep. And that is not because there's something wrong with you. And it's essential to start to play with that idea. That's part of the metamorphosis. The way that this is held in place, just like, the beings, the whatever you want to call them, earthly, non-earthly, all of it, they manipulate us and keep us stuck to the past and keep using our energy against us by keeping us in fear and keeping us separate and keeping us, guessing and keeping us waiting and keeping us fighting and all that stuff. So this started a long time ago, and it's you against you. And the shame, that shame, that feeling that there's something wrong and I have to hide it, or I have to make excuses for it, or I have to fight it, I have to deny it. All of that is what's holding us to the old field. That's one half of it. So when things come up, the number one thing we want to do on the left side, the meltdown side of metamorphosis, it also comes with having Jennifer 100%. It comes with having to earn our existence. 100%. 100%. We're always in deficit. Always in deficit. It's part of what makes us feel like we're not real. Like so scared, so vulnerable. Like, am I doing enough? Should I be here? Am I here? Am I rejected, abandoned? It's so deep, it's so deep, it's so deep. But again, I don't want to make this 3 hours. But this is the most important conversation, which is why I hope we can go into many details over the next, 5.5 weeks. But the main thing is to make the shift. So this cosmic autoimmune, this personal human autoimmune disorder is primarily, the bottom line of it is shame. And what does shame do? It causes us to separate from ourselves, to turn against ourselves, to turn against others, to hide from God. And as long as we hide from these things inside of us, or resist them, or deny them, or blame them on other people, or outproject them to others, or feel like victims of them, as long as we do any of those things, we cannot transmute them. We're just being held in stasis. And paradoxically, as soon as we can turn inward, as soon as we realize, wait, I'm supposed to have this anger. I'm supposed to feel like I want to manipulate. I'm supposed to have a negative thought. I'm supposed to be afraid, not to stay that way, to transmute, to invoke alchemy, because now is the time. And now, just like the caterpillar melts down into gel, starting with a little bit of it and going to all of it. Every part of the caterpillar, almost every part, needs to melt down into gel. So that why? Because gel is like an ion. It's like an undifferentiated potential that can take any form. Interestingly, the mazel, the spiritual source of the month of Adar, is ion. It's also undifferentiated divine potential. It's like an amorphous, it's not gel, but let's just call it like a gel. Like that's why Adar has this extreme potential for transformation. That's part of it, because the mazel, the spiritual source, mazel, if you didn't hear me say this before, mazel comes from the word nozel. It's connected to the word nozel, which means like to drip, like a nozzle. All languages are connected to Hebrew. So the mazel is the dripping or the flowing of the spiritual source of anything down, all the way down to the bottom. What's the bottom? The physical world. Hello, welcome. Welcome, Earthling. Anyway, so the mazel of Adar, every mazel, every constellation is called a mazel in the Torah tradition, and each one has different qualities. But in Adar, the mazel is very, very healthy, and the ultimate mazel is ayin. It's this undifferentiated prior to creation, not just in time, but in form, like underneath everything. It's like the black, like some. Alex Collier says that the Andromedans told him that there's under every single heavenly body, there's a black hole. I'll tell you something else. I don't know if you follow Alex Collier. I heard about him on a chat a long time ago, and I started listening to him, and he was interesting. But one of the things that he said, he apparently was contacted about by the Andromedans. I'm a little skeptical about everybody, but this thing makes sense to me, so I'm holding space for it. And they told him that every heavenly body has a black hole underneath it, meaning it fits, because every yesh, every something in Kabbalistic terms, every existence that has some kind of, whether spiritual or physical, has form, has shape, has, dimension, duration, because it's space and time. So underneath it is an ayin. Its core is a nothing. So that made sense to me. And then this is just completely unrelated, but so interesting. It's the main thing that made me wonder if Alex Collier, yes, is credible in a lot of things, even though I've heard him say things that contradict the Torah. And do the Andromedans know everything? Probably not. So anyway, we always have to know that things could be true, but they're not necessarily true, and they're for sure not totally true. I try to remember that. But he did say that the Andromedans told him that in all of their recorded history, they're like supposedly fifth dimensional beings, the black holes had been dormant. They had no recorded history of them doing anything until one day in 1994. I think he said it was the 13th of March, but I could have that wrong. Maybe it's the 23rd of March, probably the 23rd of March, that all of a sudden all the black holes became active. And light started coming up out of the black holes, which raised the entire universe to all 12 dimensions, to a higher dimension. What is that date? Of course, I went and looked it up in the Hebrew English calendar, and it is the Rebbe's birthday, the Rebbe's last birthday since he was seen on the physical plane, that date. So, just like Moses' birthday is in Adar, and that's why the mazel of Adar is so dominant, or maybe the other way around. So I just found that really interesting. When things fit the Torah calendar, and especially, the calendar of Hasidus, of the mystical Torah, to me, that's okay. This is on target. And when they don't, I'm like, all right, nobody knows everything. That's the ultimate arbiter for me. But anyway, back to the metamorphosis. So on the left side, on the meltdown side, we cannot do alchemy unless we embrace the things that we have that create separateness, that we're separate from. We have to be one with all parts of ourselves. We have to view ourselves with love. Inflammation in the body is such a big thing, such a big thing. We're hearing that inflammation is the source of almost everything. Inflammation is a state of war. The body's at war, whether it's at war with a virus, or it's at war with a broken bone. It needs to bring more blood supply, but it's at war. It sends troops. And when this happens persistently and chronically, so it causes an out of balance, and it causes a lot more problems than it's solving. This is the kind of one of the plagues of our ages, maybe the core Like they say, inflammation is behind every kind of illness. So that state of war, we have it with ourselves. That state of war comes from the shame and everything that follows, the sadness, the fear, the anger, the projection, the blame, the hiding, the denial, all of it. That shame, which separates us from ourselves, separates us from God's love. So when we, and makes it impossible for us to do alchemy. So when we embrace these parts of ourselves, when we understand more about how creation is meant to be and how we're designed, and that this darkness is the raw material for our light, that it's not something we did, but something we are assigned to, like special forces, like warriors. You're not in the mud because you did something wrong. You're in the mud because you've got what it takes to rescue the village or whatever it is, to get through the swamp, to kill the alligator, I don't know, to drain the swamp. Okay, so that's part of it, to remove that veil of shame that separates us from ourselves, from each other, and from God. To look at all of the things that come up as these raw impulses that trigger these gullus, these exile feelings, and to not to embrace the action of like perpetrating on someone else, to embrace the energy of the feeling. And there's specific ways, tools, modalities to do this. We work with them all the time in my programs. I work with them all the time in my life. There are many. We'll discuss some of them throughout the challenge. But basically, the first step is you need to understand that this is part of your mission. Your feelings of there's something wrong with me, and all the reasons that you definitely have to back that up, that if only people knew, they would know, but they can never know because that's too shameful. That's the snake. That's what keeps us separate. Now, remember, our separateness is crucial to our transformation, to our development as divine beings, but not to stay separate. So it's time for us to create that unity, that unification, and that alchemy by embracing those things in us and learning how to transmute them. That's the meltdown that the caterpillar has to go through in order to be free to emerge as a butterfly. You cannot drastically, a door just opened in my head again and I had to say yes or no to it. Let me say yes really quickly. So the Rebbe Rashab, the father of the previous Rebbe himself, said that between one yesh, one something, and another something, if it's going to be a radical difference, a radical change, there has to be a meltdown. There has to be an ayin, a nothing in between. Again, ayin, the same word as the mazel of Adar. So there has to be, this is implicit to the transformational process that God created. There has to be a meltdown of the old when it's a radical change. When it's just growth, you know something, you want to learn more, great. You don't have to melt anything down. It's true that you have to, open your mind and get rid of the fact that you think you know everything in order to learn something new. But it's not really, it's a very, very mini meltdown. But to really transform something, the old identity and paradigm, belief system, the field that you're connected to, all of it has to melt down, or your connection to it. All has to melt down in order to make yourself, the raw material available to take a new form. That's number one. Number two, remember we're talking about the last generation of exile and the first of redemption. We're almost done. Number two, the other side of it is the imaginal cells. Everyone here is an imaginal cell. I have absolutely no doubt, because if not, you would not relate to me. You wouldn't want to hear me. You wouldn't be thinking about any of this. You wouldn't want to think about any of it. This is our soul tribe. So get over it. Yeah, we know there's something wrong with you. It doesn't disqualify you. That sensitivity actually brings you into this group. Even it's one of the signs and characteristics of us, that we are very sensitive to the fact that there's something wrong with us. Tell me why you think that might be. I want to actually see this in the chat. Why might it be that we're more sensitive to our flaws than the average person walking around? What's that got to do with being an imaginal cell? I'm really looking for an answer here. Meanwhile, I'm scrolling through this chat. You guys are so nice and engaged. Meditation seems key. Yeah, meditation's a biggie. Healing is a biggie. These are such great comments. Caterpillar's most vulnerable during its transformation. So true. I've been thinking about that so much. Yeah, that's where surrender comes in. Surrender's not like bowing your head and accept. No, surrender is opening and allowing. And that takes something. Like Jennifer, like you're saying, the caterpillar has to completely trust and let God take over. to be rewarded with a transformation. Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Brilliant. Homeopathy for your soul. So happy to hear that. Katie says, I rest in waiting when I feel overwhelmed that I'm not changing or doing or understanding. No more suppression. I'm just reading your comments. Now, when I get down to the bottom, I'll see if anybody answered my question. Autoimmune, yeah. It's so easy, you know, once you see it, it's so easy to see it. It's like there are patterns and paradigms in the world. And Sari Yehuda Schneider calls this, like, I think she calls these laws of correspondence. I call them principles of creation. When you see one, all of a sudden you see it everywhere, because reality is built from these principles. And you can easily, once you understand, you know, you can easily see if it fits, if it doesn't fit. And I'm not saying I know all the principles, but I know the ones I know, they're irrevocable, they're immutable, they're real. These are the divine building blocks of how things work. Okay, scrolling. Because we're empathic. Okay, Bookmouse says we're empathic. Very true. I'd love extra credit, Bookmouse. How do we become empathic? Or anyone else, religious upbringing. Some of us have religious upbringing. I didn't have a religious upbringing. A lot of us don't. It can be a plus, it can be a minus. You know, sometimes it's something you have to transcend. Sometimes it's a big asset, or sometimes it's both. We are in the process of transforming. You mean our tribe? Yeah, we're already interested in transforming, but why are we so sensitive to our flaws? Like, so many of us feel so deeply insecure, more than average, I would say. At least we're more aware of it than average. I don't understand anyone not being sad. Me too, but a lot of people aren't. Must have something to do with our soul being close to its rectification. Yeah, I'd say yes to that. Aware of it all. Yes, I'd say yes to that. Orly. Because Kayla says, because we spend so much time and energy looking inside. Yes, since we understand the depth of the outside comes from the inside. It's from how we're raised. So it's all of these things. It's all of these things. But I want to say, just in a simple sense, but simple but powerful, we are more aware because we're already, I think somebody just mentioned this, we're already in the transformation, because we need to desire to transform. We need to be highly motivated and primed and even skilled in looking inside and seeing what's there, and in starting to produce the alchemy. Otherwise, we couldn't be imaginal cells. If we didn't realize inside with truth, with clarity, if we didn't realize that, wait, there's a better way. Something should be different from here. There's a truth, there's a beauty in the world, there's a perfection in the world, and I'm not it. I'm so far from it. Okay, yes, that's dangerous, and we have to get over it in certain ways, but it's also, we are imaginal cells, we're holding the vision. Think about it. Look in the mirror and say, I am holding the vision. Wow, it's been really painful and stressful, but it doesn't have to be. I just need to acknowledge that I am here because I am holding the vision. And that brings with the picture that I need to be very, very hyper aware of the things that are ready to melt down, but not to be separate from them, not to hide from them or to be ashamed, but to embrace them with tools and techniques that come with this time of redemption, so that I can turn that into the melted amorphous ion, the raw material, to be pulled from me, and because I'm an imaginal self for all of humanity, into the new form, into the redemption. Now, I want to say about imaginal cells, I'll keep repeating certain of these things, because without repetition, we don't learn anything. When I've learned something from the Torah for the 10th or 12th or 20th time, that's when I start to get it. But also because not everybody's listening to everything. So I recently learned that the imaginal cells, they hold the DNA for the future version for the butterfly, but like that tomato seed, what starts to grow the butterfly? What starts to grow the tomato plant? It's not sitting on the desk. A caterpillar is not going to grow into a butterfly unless certain things happen. There has to be the meltdown, and then there has to be the DNA activation of the imaginal cell. So that connects the caterpillar, the caterfly, connects it to a different field, that's a different environment that now will allow a butterfly to grow out of that amorphous material. So the imaginal cells hold the future DNA. When an imaginal cell starts to show up, starts to activate, the caterpillar immune system sees it as a foreign invader, as a threat, and kills it or tries to kill it. when 2 imaginal cells or 3 imaginal cells or a bunch of imaginal cells start to cluster together. This is really, go look it up. This is what Google says about butterflies. So when a few imaginal cells start to cluster together, all of a sudden, it doesn't say this, it doesn't say they have a stronger vibration, but clearly they have a stronger vibration, and the caterpillar, social proof, the caterpillar gel starts to move in their direction. So imaginal cells coming together, instead of each imaginal cell hiding in shame from the next one because there's something wrong with it, and Adam and Eve had to hide and be separate. So when the imaginal cells start to cluster together, now a morphic field, they're connecting to a new morphic field. That's really what's happening. And that morphic field is so much stronger because it's the morphic field of the future. Like I mentioned, the Rebbe said let there be 1 or 2 or 3 people that know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done in order to make Geula real. We can't change the world by interacting directly with the world. We can change the world, and we're meant to, by activating ourselves as imaginal cells to the point where we cluster together, several of us, and even if it's 3, and that way we're connecting to a new morphic field, and that new morphic field, we're like the grappling hook, we're gripping onto it. And since we are part of the caterpillar and we know it, so now the whole entire caterpillar starts to gain in connection to the new morphic field, and the butterfly starts to emerge until the process is done. So in the next call, this is basically what I wanted to say today. And then I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow because tomorrow's Friday. We'll see how much time I have. But whether it will be Friday or Sunday, I'll let you know. I'm going to I think I should try to make a schedule maybe of 1 or 2 or 3 broadcasts per week. Or maybe I should go with the flow. I don't know. But I want to talk in the next call about how to start activating ourselves as imaginal cells. Let me just make a note. But for now, what I would like everybody to focus on, remember, we're building our tools to tune into the new radio station, to connect to the new field. So one of them is the bracelet. Whenever we have a complaint, and what does it mean, a complaint? When you have a thought, you can have a thought like the kitchen is dirty, and following that immediately with no negative feeling could be, let me get it clean. You could have a thought, oh, my hair looks messy, let me brush it. That's not a complaint. A complaint is when you have a feeling that brings you an emotion that is from the exile, from the snake voice, even if it's instantaneous and almost not like conscious, but you can feel it in the way that your energy shifts. So when you have something like that, even a very small, very subtle, change the hand that your bracelet is on or whatever you're doing. That was the first assignment. What was the second assignment? To see our this is what I have in my note anyway, to see our cells in our brain as satellite dishes, to realize that our cells are wired in a certain way, and we are pulling in. We're not victims, we're attractor fields. We're pulling in things. If you remember something I don't remember, let me know. Then in the previous call, we talked about how we need to surrender to the flow of things, which we talked about today, and how we need to look for divine providences, for signs of words that we were thinking of, that we see it on a truck, we see it on the screen, we hear someone say it. The call that the person we were thinking about calls us, whatever it is, we're looking for for evidence for our brains. We're rewiring our brains here that there is a greater hand that's bringing the world into existence out of divine intention and design at every instant from nothing. So we want to connect to the I, and we want to connect to the architect. So in this case for today, the assignment is to look at the epigenetics, to look at your thoughts. I want you to examine your thoughts with more care. I want you to look, and you do this in writing if possible, and you can share in the comments to the YouTube, the Facebook, that this is running on Twitter also. So anywhere that you're listening, feel free to share your experience in the comments. I want you to look at what are your persistent or repetitive flaws, impulses that you've been hiding from. That's number one. And then if you were to embrace them instead, what would that experience be like, and what might open for you? What might be the light inside of that darkness? So I just want you to start looking. Instead of turning your face away, I want you to turn your face toward. Instead of rejecting, I want you to look for the light inside of that darkness so that the alchemy can begin. Okay, let me know if that's clear. So I'm still looking at the chat here. Katie says, I think Hashem coming into my consciousness created the contrast. Cindy, maybe it's a clue we need to remove the shame. Yeah, we need to transmute the shame. Yeah, we're not trying to remove things because I didn't say this in detail, but the Rebbe talked a number of times about this idea that exile, that redemption, that geula, that the awakened, perfected divine world, that is the divine plan, that it's made out of the fallen world. The way that he explains this, Hebrew is the language of creation. So the Hebrew words, God speaks the creation into existence through the divine speech, like the Torah describes, where God says, Yehi or, let there be light, Vayehi or, and there was light. So Kabbalah explains that there are a massive number, 300 plus different, they're called gates, codes, through which God's speech gets transmuted. Like gematria is one of them. Gematria is actually the simplest one, where every letter of every word has a numerical value, and you can switch if you have something else with the same numerical value. They are related, but there are other ones. There are many other ones. So all of them really should be learned together, and I'm very, very far from even from a beginner, much less an expert, but I have a sense of how the system works. So everything is a code, like a computer code or like a mathematical code. Things are being projected into reality in form when really it's divine energy going through these templates, through the system. But basically, God created the world through speech, and those letters of speech, of divine speech, are still resonating within creation, still bringing everything into being, to the point where, as I've said many times already, I'm quoting the Torah here, that if God would, the Tanya, that if God would stop speaking the words of creation for even an instant, everything would revert back to nothing. Not like it'd only be a memory. It wouldn't be a memory. There wouldn't have been anything. I was recording a class for my school today, a little while ago before this, and I just was reading again that the Rebbe said that he was talking about asking the question, how could we say that the world was created at a certain date when time was created? When the world was created, time and space were also created. There's no time and space. It's all part of creation. There's only one. So when we realize that everything is created from divine speech, when we start to learn that, we can start to understand the energy, the specific cosmic energies that are connected to specific words. Okay, so the Rebbe said that the Aramaic word for gullus is gola, which is spelled gimel vav lamed hey, 4 letters, gimel vav lamed hey, and the word for redemption is geula, gimel vav lamed hey, with the addition of an aleph as the second letter, geula, gola or geola. We just pronounce the one letter a little differently, but it's the same word with the aleph as the second letter. When you add the aleph, you change the exile to redemption. You literally take the raw material of the caterpillar on every level, cosmically also, and reveal that it is God in a costume, in a form. So how do you do that? How do you add that letter? The letter that's added that turns exile into redemption, gullus into geula, is aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, aleph bet, and it means one. That's its numerical equivalent, and it means the one, and aleph refers to God on 3 different levels, which I won't talk about now because we're at an hour. But maybe at a future time, making a note for myself. Anyway, so as we turn away, or as we remove the veil of shame that turns us away from ourselves, this cosmic autoimmune, this personal human autoimmune, and we realize that everything about us is a raw material for infinite divine light and goodness, and that it is in the alchemy, in the transmutation, in the inserting or the revealing of the divine purpose and divine plan, even allowing the awareness that there is one and embracing ourselves. And here's the bottom line. Instead of pushing God out, bring God in. For this, you have to really start to work on the relationship. And at the end of the day, that's all there really is. All of this is just a backdrop. Everything. The simulation, all the simulations, the stories, the history, time, space, it's all a backdrop. so that God can have a relationship with you and you can have a relationship with God. And as we have a relationship with ourselves, that's where we find God in the most intimate way, and vice versa. When we open ourselves to God, that's when we can have a relationship with ourselves in the most intimate way. And everything needs to go back to the inner and to the embracing of it all, and to creating out of this chaos of separation a new divine order. And that comes through love and embracing and expanding and allowing and surrendering, and the tools and techniques of transformation, transmutation, and alchemy. But anyway, that's the bottom line. So that's the focus between now and the next call, as well as everything that we're building. We don't want to drop any of these tools. But here, I want you to look for the things that you're trying to hide from. Consider how you might reveal the Aleph in them, what might be their divine purpose, what might be their divine truth. And if you can't get to that, just simply allow God to be there with you in your sadness or in your fear. And feel free to be completely honest about how you feel, because that's what we do in relationships. We're not putting on a show. That's really what happened after the eating from the tree of knowledge, when Adam and Eve were hiding. It's because they weren't looking good to themselves. So they put on a show. And we've been putting on a show ever since. That's not going to get us where we need to go. That's going to hold us where we don't want to be. So the meltdown starts when you say, no show, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be truthful. And I'm going to do it with God. And I'm going to assume, I'm going to step into the relationship that I want, not the one that I'm afraid of. And that is what we have to do in every relationship if we want to transform it, starting with ourselves. So that requires truth and authenticity. That requires an assumption of love and acceptance, togetherness. And if it's new for you, great. That means as you move into it, it's going to make a vast difference. And remember, if you're an imaginal cell, it doesn't take many to start to activate, and to then activate the new DNA, which connects you to a new field, which, if you're a tomato seed, will now grow a plant of tomatoes that have a lot of seeds of their own. And you can end up from one dead seed, infinite life. And that's really where we want to go. So I'm going to end with this. Just going to look at these wonderful comments. Katie says, yay, we're going to do this together. Yeah. Yes, Book Mouse, nourishment of self to grow, creating a bond of unity that's near impossible to sunder. I love that, Norman. Yeah. Okay, guys. Yeah, I like your butterfly, Book Mouse. So I'll see you soon. And I'd love to hear how you're doing with the building. Just before I step out, I just want to remind you, what are we doing here? Oh, I'm going to have to say one more thing. We are rewiring the brain. We are changing the receptors in our cells. We're changing our wiring, because wherever the body is, that's the story that's real. The body makes the story real. We can change our thoughts. We can even change our feelings. But if we don't change our wiring, what we're connected to as truth is whatever our body is wired to. So we're changing the wiring in the body. The brain is part of the body. Every cell is part of the body. That's what we're doing here. So take these tools seriously. Take your role seriously. You're born to be an imaginal cell. We need you. Get with it. We're doing it together. Take care, everyone. Happy Adar. Oh, I forgot. The second assignment was to be happy, to use Adar. We transform through happiness. Do something extra today and every day to make yourself happy, another thing to make someone else happy, your kids, your spouse, your neighbor, your friend, and then something else you do with someone or a group of people to be happy together. Something every day would be ideal from each of those categories. Okay, take care, guys.